Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the workshop 254. It is the 12th day of December, the year being 2021, and the time is 8:09 a.m. East African time. So nowadays, the discussion for the day is a continuation of the discussion we had last time, and it is to do with it is a discussion on engineers and matters to do with their welfare. We had rich discussions in the past along the same lines. Issues that arose during the past discussions had to do with local content from Engineer Mwangi. That was his main emphasis. Then we had diversification and also issues with the welfare vehicle, the IK, and also the EBK. So these are issues that came up during our last discussion. So of course, we now need to proceed with the discussion further, move forward, and get more insights on what other engineers have to say on issues that affect them. So today we have two guests. So we have Engineer Godfrey Marambe, who is an OCM, an Ordinary Council member of the IEK. And we also have Engineer Okanga. We also have Engineer Okanga Anjichi, who is a known voice in these circles. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll let the guests introduce themselves, and then we can proceed on with the discussion. Thank you very much.
Engineer Namano, you didn't say who to go first.
Okay, sorry for that. Engineer Godfrey Marambe, kindly start by introducing yourself. Engineer Marambe.
Okay. I think for that purpose, let me just put my video on. So my name is Engineer Godfrey Marambe. I think I was approached by Namano to come and participate in the discussions on the workshop. So I'm an ordinary council member, as you've mentioned. I'm also the director and CEO of Energy Intelligence Africa Limited, where we are an ESCO dealing in energy efficiency and renewable energy services and M&D services. I think this is a great thing we're having, so we'll see how the conversations goes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Marambe. Engineer Okanga, now you can say something. Can you introduce yourself to us, kindly?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Engineer Namano, for having me here on the workshop.
Yes.
And greetings to those who are attending. Great ladies and gentlemen, engineers, and the viewers who are following online. And before I say something about myself, I would like to thank the initiative organizers. This is a very important platform because engineers, we require all the platforms that we can get to tell our unique stories, because for long, the engineer stories have been told by people who are not engineers, and therefore we are not in control of that narrative. Having said that, my name is Okanga Anjichi, professional engineer with slightly over 10 years experience. This is experience that has been gained within the built environment, oil and gas, and the maritime industry. Aside from that, and you mentioned the engineer that discussions in the last editions of this initiative included diversification. And in that light, I've also diversified, and I'm also into safety. And safety is, could you call it a brother or sister to engineering? So where I am a safety advisor and I'm a fire safety auditor. And so for engineering practice, I focus mainly on concrete and non-destructive evaluation of structures, including temporary works design. And for safety, you could call it safety engineering if you wish. And for safety practice, mostly it's safety audits, fire safety audits, including accident investigations that would speak to things like fire investigations, root cause analysis, and also offering advice on risk management, safety management, emergency management. So that's in a nutshell the experience I've had and what I do to leverage on that experience. And finally, in service to the society, I sit at the National Council on Occupational Health and Safety, where I am an independent member and I provide an engineering angle to safety. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Engineer Okanga. That's quite an introduction there. An engineer in safety. Okay, so we proceed on with just into the discussion, and just from where you are, Engineer Okanga. What are some of the welfare issues that you picked up in your 10+ years of experience? What are some of the issues that you think affect Kenyans?
Thank you for that question. And in thinking about, when you ask that question, I think about and reflect on the time I have been within engineering. And there has been a narrative, there has been talk, there has been discussions, and you are adding to this discussion by this platform. And therefore the issues affecting engineers are fairly well known. The solutions also have been discussed. People have been proposing way forwards. So it would really be a summary in the way I see it. So forgive me if you don't see earth-shattering insights, but it's just really a summary from my point of view. So the way I've seen engineering, I've classified the issues into 5. The first issue, which I would say is the welfare of the engineer, is an engineer would want to learn and grow. So that would be the first welfare aspect of an engineer. Beginning from the entry career engineer, we like to call them the GEs, but generally they're entry level. So they would want to get a chance to learn from other experienced engineers, from mentors. They will want a chance to make mistakes and learn from them. Of course, controlled mistakes under the guidance of more senior engineers. Then to mid-career engineers, and we would like to call them professional engineers. Mid-career engineers would like to keep abreast to changing the landscape and the landscape for knowledge and skills within the engineering field. And so this we like to call it continuous professional development. See what is happening, what is cutting edge, how can you adapt to that so that you are not left behind, so that you are continuously relevant as an engineer within the sector. So that would be a second track on that aspect of learn and grow. And finally, let career engineers. Now you have sufficient experience within the industry. You probably have a vehicle for your own self, maybe a farm, a vehicle. In this case, I mean a farm, a company, to practice engineering. So an engineer at that level will also want to learn and grow so that they can always adjust their ship sails to respond to these emerging needs for the engineer. The second one, and we try to focus on these a lot as engineers in our various platforms and forums, fortunes. So an engineer would want to build some individual equity. This is where we talk day in, day out, including things like fair pay, fair fees for consultants, fair rates for contractors, fair prices. This is where schemes of service for public sector engineers will be featuring heavily. Local content you mentioned in the previous editions for this, and I've been following the previous editions where engineers talked in depth about local content matters, and including issues like driving quacks out of the engineering market, so that engineers can have reserve their rightful space within the engineering market. So that would be the second one on fortunes. Then the third issue, I call it engineers would like to be involved. So involvement in the execution of engineering aspects. For long, we've been in a mold of consultancy, but now we need to break out of that mold and go into the execution. I remember Engineer Adai talked quite a bit on this. Then involving ourselves in producing quality work, engineering work, that is, and yourself. Last time when you're talking about local content, the bill that was shut down, you touched a bit on this, and we're going to discuss more about that. Under involvement also, engineers have been lagging behind on involving the actual users of their engineering output. So this will be a welfare issue for an engineer, in the sense that an engineer would want to be involved in implementing their engineering, and also be involved in ensuring that the public gets quality, so that then the actual users, who are the public in this case, can recognize the engineer. And when you say recognize, that brings me to the fourth welfare issue for the engineer. The engineer would like recognition within the society. So at whatever level of engineer practice, you want to be recognized within the society, and also within the profession. So you want to peer recognition by your fellow engineers, and this speaks to issues like inclusivity, and we'll be discussing a bit more on this, hopefully, in the coming minutes. And finally, the issue that I see as an engineer welfare issue would be the need for an engineer to contribute. So contribution to official agenda, contribution to shaping public opinion, including discussions, conversations at the arena. That would be an engineer welfare issue. So in a nutshell, those are the 5 issues: learn and grow, fortunes for the engineer, getting involved. This is where we get our hands dirty, contributing, you could call it top down, and being recognized, receiving the respect that the engineer would need within the society and the profession. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Okanga. Really, some of the local content and the like, those were raised by Engineer Dai, Engineer Mwangi. And when you talk of growing, things like that, those were actually also raised by Engineer, I believe it was Engineer Abira, Engineer Abira, those issues last session. So that is encouraging to acknowledge, to recognize that the issues are cross-cutting, as you just when you commenced your presentations. brought that up. So Engineer Marambe, you've been in these circles for a while, you're very experienced, more than many of us. So can you let us get your take on the subject? Engineer Marambe, what are some of the welfare issues affecting engineers?
Thank you, Namano. I want to look at engineers as a career that you start actually very early. You start it. You get ambitions to become an engineer in high school, but your real engineering starts actually when you join university. And you'll notice that most of the time you have students who are studying engineering from various backgrounds, even at the university. And one of the challenges that faces the engineering student is opportunities to learn in the industry. Sometimes they have financial challenges, and also they get a challenge in getting opportunities to work with experienced engineers, or to even get firms that can employ them during the attachments and all that. So some of those issues are really tough for engineering students. And then after graduation, you also get the engineer graduates, and he needs to focus on so many things. He needs to get a good earning. He needs to grow in terms of his career, in terms of gaining another advantage in terms of certifications. He also needs to grow in terms of getting real experience in engineering in whatever he studied.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't get enough opportunities for them in that area.
Yes.
And the other thing is when you look at opportunities for growth, sometimes you find like we've left very little opportunities for engineers to join engineering. So you find us losing engineers to even other paths in life, like they will go into banking, into finance and all that. So we really need to work on that and see how we can bring them back together. The other thing I will say, as engineers, we've been lacking, especially in this country, is that unity and the unity of purpose, so that we can be able to guide and be able to influence how the society treats us, and how we also get the opportunities in the industry. So we've had for a long time the two bodies, Engineers Board of Kenya and the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. I will say they were not very proactive, but we've seen a lot of changes in the recent years in terms of now we are seeing a lot of unity. Even when you go to IEK events, in the last 3 years, we've been attracting more than even 500 engineers in our conferences. So it means now engineers are coming together and we are having conversations. The next stage will be how we can now translate this unity that we're building to actually influence some of the issues my co-speaker today has pointed out, like how do you influence the scale of fees? How do you influence earnings in public service, the scheme of service? How do you influence the rates for contractors? How do you influence how we protect opportunities for local engineers, whether you're as a consultant, as a contractor, or even in employment? So apart from that, there's also the other issue of as in engineers ourselves, under the associations we have, are we able to to come up with schemes that can actually assist us ourselves and come up with strong associations that touch on other issues like benevolent issues, like coming up with a very strong circle where an engineer, you can actually, sometimes you can win a job and you're not able to finance it. So can we come with an institution that can be able to support the local engineers? Because you'll realize sometimes that is also where you fail. You get an opportunity, but you're not able to fulfill. The other thing is on continuous professional development. I think now EBK and IEK are working closely to see how we can come up with programs that actually add value to engineers in terms of knowledge, in terms of you gaining and learning about a new thing that is happening in the industry. We don't want to just have programs where you are going to gain CPD points. No, it needs to be something that you actually get value for your money. So basically, I think these are some of the things that have been going through my mind, and I'm happy that the workshop is taking this opportunity to actually discuss these issues, and we can be able to influence. And I was at the conference in 2018, 2019, and even 2021. We had like this year we had a session where we had engineers who are in politics, and how Engineer Gumbo really he gave a talk on how they've been able to influence by them being in parliament, how they influence some of the policies that are going to really affect engineers. You saw what happened with bills in the road sector. Lawyers, accountants, they want to come into our space. How are engineers going to affect the situation by being there at the front and speaking and influencing? And this is something engineers have not learned to do. Even when you get bills and all those stages affecting something that is going to touch on engineers. I think this is something that we need to be vocal about. So thank you, and back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Engineer Marambe, for that. So just we will just you've highlighted some of the issues already, and thank you for that. So just from where you are, engineer, how about you just pick it up from there and just discuss, pick, if you were to pick one issue that you think is critical and it really has a serious effect on engineers, what would it be? And how would you, as an engineer yourself, address the same situation? Marambe, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Namano. I think one of the things I will mention on my side, because I'm also an entrepreneur and I've been running my company, Energy Intelligence Africa Limited, for almost 6 years now. I think one of the things that I would like to see being addressed seriously by us engineers is the issues of earnings, scheme of service, scale of fees, and also local content for engineers. So when you look at something like the scheme of the scale of fees, which is being pushed, at least we're making progress with EBK. We even had public participation. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of cutthroat competition in the industry where, as engineers, we've been left to fight for projects on price. But you know, engineers, you really compete on your technical ability. So you should not actually compete on the price because we're all engineers. We learned the same thing, and the only thing that should be able to differentiate you from one person to the other one is your experience in handling that particular project. So the issue of you being asked to give a financial proposal that is not based on any rates in the industry, that is one of the things that I think is going to really assist us as engineers. And let's make sure we the engineers ourselves try to adhere to this, whether it's in the private sector, whether you're doing work for someone in the private sector, or whether you're doing work for the government. Let us compete on our technical capacity, and leave the issues of competing on finance be handled by the schemes and the scales that we'll have for engineers. I think for me that is the most important thing, because you'll be able to weed out the quacks also who are in the industry. Someone wants to do a job, he's lowering the value of performing a certain job because he just wants to win a job, but he's not, because of the amount of money he's going to charge, it means eventually he will produce substandard work. Because if you're paid low, of course, you're going to not perform work according to the quality that is required. I think that is one of the things I consider that engineers, we really need to take seriously. We avoid cutthroat competition, because once we engage in that, then we are going to just finish ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Marambe. So you scale of fees and then local content. I think we need to do a session on this local content. So it keeps on coming up. Every engineer talks of local content. So over to you, Engineer Okanga.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So I don't know, is it the same question that you?
Yes, it is the same question, but so from that was from Engineer Marambe. So from your end, just if you were to highlight one issue, what would it be if you had to address a welfare issue? What would it be?
Yes, I had highlighted 5 issues, grouping them into learn and grow, the fortunes for the engineer, engineer involvement, engineer contribution, and engineer recognition. You know, I was having this discussion with a friend, and I made the comment that engineers like middling. We like the middle so much. So we are neither at the bottom, neither are we at the top. In our engagements, it's like we fear going to the top, or we have no motivation to go to the top. And in our implementation of projects, we need to involve the people who are involved directly. We don't involve them directly. We instead capitulate this responsibility to environmentalists and social people who go talk to. So we do not involve people directly at the bottom. Neither do we involve people at the top who initiate projects. So we are just there at the middle. Wilding, if you could use such a term, wilding in the middle. So my 2 issues, if I could alienate 2 issues, I would say contribution and involvement would be my 2 key issues, because contribution speaks at the top, so it's top down, where you are at the project initiation point. You are at the table, so you want to determine exactly what the menu is. Then at the bottom, you have involvement. My other issue would be involvement, so that we really are in touch with the people who are using our infrastructure, and I'll be explaining how this links to the fortunes and learn and grow, because it all ties up. Like I said, we've had a disproportionate focus on the fortunes for the engineer. Actually, when you talk to an engineer, that's where an engineer goes. Pay for the engineer, rates for the engineer, local content. But it's a chicken and egg situation. Which one should come first? And I propose that these two key issues, when addressed, they will be the ones that are going to take us out of this circular movement we've been having. So under contributing, I've majored on under contributing, I've majored on setting the official agenda, so that engineers are involved in setting the official agenda, and that is at project initiation. So all those strategic instruments that are there to initiate, or initiatives that are there to initiate projects and programs, engineers need to be there. And I remember Engineer Mwangi talked about this quite a bit in his presentation last time. And so I will be again talking more about this, if you allow me, in the coming minutes, setting the agenda and shaping public opinion. It's quite key that we shape public opinion, because it is the public opinion about engineers. And if you've been in the forum, you've been online forums, any engineer who listened or read in the print and electronic media would see where the public places the engineer. And the engineer is placed at a place that is not a place for the engineer, I would say. So it is actually in our better interest, our best interest, to shape this public opinion by involving ourselves in discussions. Engineers have been, it reminds me of James Austin in his 1978 book, Chess, Chance, and Creativity, where he was talking about different types of luck. The blind luck, where just manna falls from heaven. And that's what engineers have been operating at, waiting for manna to fall from heaven, that the powers that be will favor us with their benevolence. So the second one will be persistent tinkering, so that you do stuff hoping that one will stick. So you involve ourselves in doing ABCD, different ideas, trying different doors and stuff like that, and one might stick. And another one is being deliberate about it, instead of just doing helter-skelter, being deliberate about it. And that is where the prepared mind lack comes in. So that is where we need to operate at, if not at the highest level, where now we've solved all our small issues, where we have a perfect storm of all the issues in terms of our image, our brand, and our capabilities working together to assist us move forward as engineers. So that will be under contribute, and under involvement, I will be speaking more about engineers designing projects with quality and for the user. And I reminded you what you said last time, that the members in parliament were talking about lowering the quality if they went with local content. So the thing is, what is it that the public has in mind about projects done by engineers? So we need to change that narrative so that the public is able to see it in a good light. So the two contribute and involve, work hand in hand, so that then the engineer has a brand that he can stand on when demanding now for these fortunes. So I'll be focusing on those more as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, engineer. Thank you very much, Engineer Okanga, for that. What Engineer Mwangi was talked about last time is actually still the same line of reasoning. His was a call, a rally, basically calling on all engineers to participate at the policy level, where you're saying setting the menu, where the real decisions are being made. And then Engineer Abira also emphasized the issues to do with going beyond just doing the technical designs and drawings and applying your engineering to real life, making it about the people, asking the people, what do you want? How do you want it done? And not just giving them solutions to problems that you do not understand fully because it lacks their input. So thank you very much for that, Engineer Okanga. So Engineer Marambe, back to you. I'd like to ask just the same way you responded to the first question. What would be the second issue that you'd like addressed other than, say, local content and scale of fees? What other issue would you like addressed in order to fix some of the welfare issues affecting engineers? Engineer Marambe.
Thank you, Namano. I think the other issue that I will pick on is the issue of now engineers operating as one unit and having one voice. I think for us to be able to influence what we want to happen, I think it's been long overdue, and we actually needed engineers to participate in one voice. You'll realize now that we've started actually doing this, and we are actually influencing some things. I still go back to the case of the bill for road sector. You saw how we fought as engineers, and because at least this time we've been able to speak as one voice, we did a lot of lobbying through the print media, through the digital media platforms that we have. Yes. And we even met the members of that committee in Parliament through the IEK Council, and we were able to send them back to the table. The first time they postponed that bill, and then eventually they've been able to actually pass it without making those drastic changes they wanted to make to allow other professions to lead road agencies, apart from the KRB, which they were mischievous because they already have someone from the accounting field. They were mischievous. I think some powerful forces were able to influence that, and we lost on that one. But I think in future we'll be able to influence. So for me, I also dream that we can bring back the technicians and technologists back to, we have one act actually managing all of us, engineers, technologists, and technicians. That way, we are not setting ourselves up to fight against each other, and that is very important. I think, but before I finish on that issue of unity of engineers, yes, which will affect a lot of opportunities for us engineers in the industry, which also I feel for young engineers. All of us know how we struggle, especially if you don't get a job in the public sector or in the blue chip companies. You know how we struggle to get employment, and we get it sometimes with very poor conditions of work, both in terms of pay and even in terms of working itself. So I'm really hoping that with all these things that we are doing, we'll be able to influence so that as engineers, especially, It's unfair. You saw the other day when that nurses union leader was giving an example of how even nurses are paid better in counties than engineers. And we know engineers, we were the best even in high school. Engineers used to come number one
Yes.
and two at most. So how come after your graduation, now somebody else is going to earn better than you? So I think it's unfair, but let's keep this conversation going and see how we can be able to influence that and affect where it really you feel it in your pocket. Yeah, thank you, Namano.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Engineer Marambe. Okay. Thank you very much. So, Engineer Okanga, the second issue that you'd like addressed, what would it be, other than now? So, other than what you raised?
I actually had talked about two issues, so no problem. I can expound more on. I can expound more on the one on policy, and I know that we had spoken about this, or you had spoken about this last time with the other speakers, but really the focus last time was on coming up with new policies and new instruments generally, whether be it pieces of legislation, policy, and such.
Yes.
But I would go further than that. Say that sometimes we have these instruments in place. What remains is implementation. And so what engineers also need to focus about, apart from creating new policy, and it is a known issue in Kenya that Kenyans are good at policy formulation and instruments formulation, but execution sometimes gets us the wrong way. And so sometimes the lobbying might not be creation of a new policy. We have already an act of parliament for engineers. We have other acts of parliament, including legislation on public-private partnerships, including legislation on public procurement, and many other legislations, including legislation on physical planning and such legislation, roads legislation. So sometimes the lobbying will be implementation of these instruments. So we might be carried away by the new and shiny. So we want a new piece of legislation, then it goes and sits on the shelf somewhere. So that would be one aspect, and an extra aspect I would look at. If you look at the law that we have for engineers, for example, there are so many provisions within the law that have never been effected. And if we are to infect the functions of the board, let's say right now, fully, then you would find that engineers will be in a better stead than we are right now. So we might have to look at that angle also. And another angle would be that progressive interpretation. You know, legislation doesn't have one definitive interpretation. And that's why people go to courts, and courts can even differ from the trial court, the appeal court, and such stuff. So even the implementing agency can interpret that law or that instrument in a way that is progressive. And so we have to contextualize the instruments that we already have. Aside from us coming up with the new instruments, we need to implement the existing instruments in full, and we need to contextualize those that are being implemented so that they are progressive in nature. For example, if you look at our instrument right now that governs engineers, you would find that there are provisions in there that are being implemented, but it doesn't preclude the implementer from interpreting it in a progressive manner. So, for example, right now we are stuck with a limited view of, say, the number of professions or sub-disciplines of engineering. So people are stuck with the civil engineering, electrical and mechanical. So if you studied the mechatronics, you have to choose whether you are electrical or mechanical. Yes. If you are a marine engineer working on a ship, you have to choose whether you are in mechanical or electrical. If you are in aeronautical, so there is a limit of creativity in interpreting. There is no law that prohibits the board, for example, from registering many sub-disciplines. So there has to be a creative way of looking at it, and it's the engineer's function or role, ourselves individually and through our institutions, to create this context, to actively define this context and present it to the implementers of these instruments. It reminds me to when you go to an ophthalmologist for your eye checkup, any general eye checkup. You don't have anything wrong with your eyes, but you just go there for a checkup. So you feel your eyes are okay, but as soon as there's a lens they put in your eye, and you see things clearly. So it's the same thing with context. So a new context on your eye can assist you see things clearly, and that is the context that engineers should actively and robustly define, so that and present this new context to the implementers of the existing instruments, so that they are able to interpret existing instruments and implement them in a progressive manner for the benefit of engineers. So that would be the three track, if there is anything like that. One, lobbying for extra or new instruments where there are none. And in most of the cases, there are some instruments that you can ride on. So ensuring that they're fully implemented. And finally, those that are being implemented, can they be implemented in a progressive manner? So that will be a bit more on that first issue that I talked about on policy. And in terms of shaping public opinion, which is still top down, and we say that our name, our brand as engineers, is in the gutter, I would say. If you follow online, for example, the public meets with an unfavorable engineering experience. Maybe there's a project, there's a bridge that has failed. They always attribute it to a Kenyan engineer. They meet with a good infrastructure somewhere. They will never attribute it to a Kenyan engineer. They will say this is a foreigner A or foreigner B. And so they will say that's why we need more foreigners, because they create good infrastructure. They do not know the backstory. Maybe even that infrastructure has been constructed by a Kenyan. Or maybe that one that was bad was constructed by that foreigner. So there is a notion within the Kenyan public that puts us in the gutter. I don't know if you can still hear me. That puts us in the gutter. So we need to somehow sanitize this. We are in the COVID era, so sanitization is a key issue. So we need to sanitize this, and engineers need to get involved in the arena. There is the arena where ideas are exchanged, so that the public is able to calibrate its view. So we seem to have lost the host, but all right. Maybe we give the host.
Carry on, engineer.
Yeah. So I was saying that we need to then sanitize this name, and that would then call on engineers to volunteer to serve. There are calls to volunteer, and a good example would come, for example, when KEBS calls for technical committees. That's a call to volunteer, and engineers need to take up on this so that they can provide their view. You find, for example, those technical committees, developing maybe standards that would affect engineers directly, and the representation of engineers is wanting. Not because they have been denied the chance or opportunity, but because they didn't volunteer. So when such chances come in, it is good that engineers volunteer so that then they are able to provide that viewpoint from the engineer's point of view. And that begins a process of sanitization of the engineer's name so that the engineer's name is held in high regard and esteem. Another one would be that engineers need to, is it me to welcome you back, the host? All right. So I was just carrying on when you were away. I had talked about engineers volunteering. I had talked about engineers getting involved in the arena where ideas are exchanged. In this case, it will be engineers should write more. Writing is quite powerful. So in the print media, on social media, engineers should write more, because when you write, you're able to provide a viewpoint that's from the engineer's perspective. And I have seen this. Yes, I have seen this in the recent past. Engineers are taking up this call to put their opinions out into the public. For long, engineers, we wanted to only write technical reports. Reports that are read by our peers, reports that are read by very few people that know what you're talking about. But we have a fear of expressing our opinions in public, a public that is not of a technical nature. And therefore, engineers need to learn to simplify technical issues that is in a way that is accessible to the public, so that the public is able to digest this information and see how engineers are contributing favorably to all, I would say all spheres of the public existence. You know, when I wanted to go to the university, I remember this story very well. One of my career mentors, I asked him, so what should I do? What do you think I should do at the university? So what the career mentor told me is, do you know the pyramid? I said, yes, I know the pyramid. And he said, can the pyramid stand up without its base? I said, no. So I asked, so what is the relationship with what I have to do? So what he did, he drew the pyramid everyone knows, the Maslow pyramid of needs. So at the base, we have the physiological needs, shelter, food, and clothing. Then we have the safety needs. Then he told me, look at the base. The base, an engineer has an influence on the entire of the base. Without this base, you can't move on to psychological needs. And therefore, be it shelter, be it food, be it clothing, be it safety, an engineer is involved in one way or another. So I asked him then, at that time I was confused between electrical engineering and civil engineering. So I wanted to do one. So I asked him, which one should I do between these two? So he told me a next story, which I will share in a future interview. If you organize one for civil engineers, I will share with you this story on what he told me about that. But the point is that the engineer is involved across the entire existence of the public. And without the engineer, there is no shelter. Without the engineer, there is no food security. Talk about supply chain, talk about food production itself, agricultural engineers and such. So the engineer is involved at the best. And therefore, this engineer has to get out his story. The engineer performs a huge role, and yet their story is told by someone else. So we really have to, we really have to take over that and publish more. Aside from writing more for the public, we have to publish more in terms of technical publications, so that we influence our status within the industry. So within the industry, we have other professions. So we need to publish more. As we publish more, our status within the eyes of other professions even rises. And I'm happy that we have the Engineering in Kenya magazine, which was launched recently as an offshoot of the other defunct magazine. And we need to get more of such. The conference that happens yearly is a good initiative. We need the publication that goes out of it, that comes out of it, the product of it, to be accessible, so that engineers and other people can continuously read and keep abreast of what engineers are discussing technically. Finally, of course, engineers need to appear more again in the arena, in such forum like webinars, in television, radio, so that we can propagate our ideas and our opinions into the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Anjichi, for that elaborate response. So, okay, so when it comes to writing, you notice that actually it's very true. Engineers are rarely right. We prefer doing the calculation and leaving the writing to the other people to write, which I think is, in the long run, it ends up working against the engineer. As long as someone else is telling your story, then they cannot really tell it as well as you yourself would have told it, because you know it better than anyone else. But fortunately, we have engineer Shama writes. Engineer Shama writes. I've also seen Engineer Abira do some articles in our local dailies. I haven't seen you write, Engineer Okanga. How is that? Or you do your work, you write somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a call to arms for everyone, including myself. And in fact, it's something I've been thinking about in the recent past, that we have stories, and these are stories that we need to let out. And so watch this space. You'll be seeing my name somewhere soon.
Thank you. That is encouraging. Engineer Marambe, should we expect some articles from you as well? Or?
Yes, Engineer Namano, actually, I think that's a call to action for all engineers.
Yeah.
We are not going to sleep and let things pass by. So you'll be seeing a lot of articles also from me soon. So it's a call to action that we are working on.
Not just articles, as you heard Engineer Anjichi say, you also need to appear more. We need to see you more on TV. We know you are an entrepreneur, but it's only us who know you as an entrepreneur.
That's true. So, pardon?
You could inspire more if we were to see you more on TV, if we were to see you more on social media, if your presence was everywhere, you know.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Even for your own personal growth, I think it's better to be out there, let people know what you do, let the public know what you do, and that can also assist you to grow. So I agree. Writing articles, publishing digital platforms, and educating the public on what you do and what is happening in your industry is going to be the norm for engineers. And that's why even I appreciate what the workshop is doing. You are creating a platform for us to even speak amongst ourselves. And I know these videos are being shared widely. So this is a great platform, and we'll be doing that going forward.
Thank you very much, Engineer Marambe. Engineer Okanga, you are a safety engineer, but
yes,
you specialize in safety matters. Okay, so this is just a question from my end to you. I mean, I haven't heard you say anything to do with safety when it comes to the welfare of engineers. You know, engineers work out there and they're exposed to a lot of safety issues.
Yes.
I mean, isn't that a welfare issue?
From your
perspective.
Yes,
also,
you are right.
I haven't heard you said when a breed like what we have when. Yes.
Sorry, you are saying something?
Yes. If the other thing that I was hoping you'd touch on was, you know, when bridges collapse. Of course, you said when infrastructure fails, it's the Kenyan engineer. When it's a good infrastructure, it's the foreign engineer. But I haven't heard you comment on the collapsed the buildings that you see collapse everywhere. It affects us.
Yes, it's a welfare issue
Yes.
in the sense that safety for all that are involved in any physical undertaking is quite paramount. The health and safety of everyone, workers, management, everyone who is in that physical space needs to
Yes.
to come in and go back in one piece. So in that way, then it becomes a safety issue, and the safety issues are welfare issues for all that are involved. So you are right in that sense that it's a safety issue. And for collapses, I see it less of a safety issue and more technical. So in terms of what is being done generally by the regulators within the infrastructure and building space, what is being done by institutions within that space, what is being done by engineers themselves, so that we can preclude or drive away people who are masquerading as engineers and yet they are not engineers. That is one. And two, those engineers who trained, yes, as engineers, but they haven't followed a way of peer recognition. To be recognized by your peers is the highest form of recognition, that you are up to the task, and therefore you are able to be provided with that responsibility to safeguard the public's safety. So there are those kinds of engineers, and they need to be encouraged to follow that process of peer recognition and the legal recognition, so that they're able to operate in a way that is recognized. So I see it as a technical matter in terms of the collapses. And from the safety side, we are heavily involved in such investigations where we are able to come in and do a root cause analysis to establish the cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Okanga. And as you do your analysis to establish the root cause, we kindly request that we see the publications for future, so that we can learn and readjust accordingly moving forward.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Engineer Marambe, I think we've heard you, and I believe individuals have questions for the both of you. Of course, this is an interaction in itself. So I'll allow, say, 2 questions, then we can conclude the discussion. Allow everyone else to go tend to their families and religions, personal personal issues. So anyone who has a question, kindly just unmute yourself and then ask your question.
Okay, thanks, Namano. I have a question to Engineer Marambe. Two things. Number one is I've seen in the comment section, it has been okay. He's the chairman of the Young Engineers Forum, something of that sort. But you see, this Young Engineers Forum is just something we just read it, but we are not part of it. We don't even know how it's structured when they hold meetings or whatever. Can he come out clearly and tell us what this Young Engineers Forum is all about? That's one. Number two, I believe Engineer Marambe was also a member of the organizing committee of the conference. It's 1 month since the conference ended, and I believe government agencies and offices are going to be closed at the end of this week. Yeah, the end of this week, that's Friday. Yeah, and we haven't received the CPDs. EBK, on the other hand, is also writing that we have to update our CPDs. Remember that on 1st January, we need to renew our licenses. This is a case whereby by 18th, I'm very sure that they will have not sorted it out. Then on 1st January, we'll be in a situation whereby we are following up for CPDs in an item that we should not even be following up for. So could Engineer Marambe just come out clear about this thing? Kama hii kitu ni ngumu, mnasema tu ni ngumu alafu tunawachana nayo. Unajua, it becomes very, I can say it becomes very demoralizing, frustrating kwanza kufuatilia CPD. As if we don't have things to do, man.
Okay, engineer,
Okay,
we hear you. Okay,
So-
let me try to answer those two questions from, I think it was Engineer Alfric Otieno.
Yeah.
Engineer on the Young Engineers chapter in IAK, is a subcommittee of the Mentorship and Capacity Building Committee. So Mentorship and Capacity Building Committee has I think it's 2 subcommittees, and then the main committee handles major of the issues. That is the Women Engineers chapter and the Young Engineers chapter. And in the Young Engineers chapter, is not a membership per se committee, because it's just a committee that handles issues that touch on young engineers. So you don't need to be a member of Young Engineers chapter. If you are a member of, if you are a young engineer, you'll be affected by the activities of this chapter. And how we handle issues on the Young Engineers chapter is we try to do a lot of mentorship for high school students to try and get them to take up engineering courses and engineering related courses. We also do a lot of mentorship and activities for university engineering students. So we do this both physically, and sometimes we do virtual mentorship sessions. And then the other one we do is we are supposed to do at least mentorship for young engineers. Now, the ones we call graduate engineers. Supposed to be somebody between graduation and 3 years post-graduation, because we assume after 3 years post-graduation you are registered. But if you are not, then we will still try and have sessions to assist in those kind of that group of engineers. And one of the things that we've been trying to push, I'm trying to push, it has not happened before, is to have a summit for young engineers, which I'm trying to sell now that to the council, and we're trying to see if we can have a summit for young engineers, fully sponsored by IK, to be held maybe in Nairobi. Like we can do like a breakfast or a morning session. From breakfast to around lunch hour, young engineers come together, they network, and we exchange ideas. We have speakers speak about issues that are going to touch on young engineers. So you can clearly see the Young Engineers chapter is not a membership a group, so it just has activities that are going to assist the young engineers. And then on the second question, which you had, please remind me, what was the second question?
Oh, the second question was about CPDs. It's one month after the conference.
Did you get your certificate, Alfred? Have you gotten your certificate?
No, I haven't gotten any.
Okay, I think one of the issues that we are having, especially for the conference, is the supplier, the contractor who was doing that digital platform, the one that's supposed to even marry your participation in the conference and automatically generate the certificate. I think he did not perform according to expectations, but we are trying as much as possible to get certificates out. So I saw a few certificates come out last week. So I believe you should be getting more certificates out this week because they are digital certificates. Unfortunately, I'm not happy that you also have to follow up on this, but it was really out of our control. We've tried as much as possible to get the best suppliers, but sometimes a supplier can fail you. So I will request maybe you can do an inquiry through email or the office line for IK next week, tomorrow on Monday or Tuesday, and follow up on that. Once you get your certificate, you can just go to your portal on the EBK website and upload your certificate, and your CPD points will be approved. So, but we are trying to see how we can improve on all these issues in future. Thank you, Engineer.
Okay, Godfrey, just before you leave,
yeah.
Let me just ask you, let's be realistic.
Yes.
Okay, whatever those are technological issues, I understand, fine. But let's be realistic. Those are 25 CPDs points. You know the guys who pay. Why don't you take that list to EBK? Because we need those certificates itakuja baadaye. We need those CPDs. Yeah. Why don't you just get those? The list of people who pay. Yeah, it's to just sort out that thing.
Engineer Alfric, Engineer Marambe,
yes,
those are issues that we can discuss later on.
I understand. A workshop material. Thank you.
Those are nitty-gritties that can be addressed. Actually, those are suggestions that you can pick on, then you can implement. Engineer Alfric, I believe Engineer Marambe has heard, and I know him very well, and I know he'll follow up on the issue. So you don't have to worry so much. You get the CPDs.
I actually wanted to let him know that I've had his suggestion, and I will follow up. I will try and see tomorrow. I'll speak to the CEO and understand what they are doing to handle that situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Marambe. So someone else with a question, kindly just unmute yourself and then let us ask.
Mine will not be a question, but I just want to thank our guests for coming today to this session. It is very important for us to come and give our ideas. I want to shout out to Engineer Okanga. I know you are a very good engineer. I just don't know why you don't take leadership, but in future, consider that also. And we're looking forward to those articles. And if you can also put your ideas on paper and share them in terms of the 5-point, it was very good to listen to you. And thank you guys for coming. And I hope many people will come and give out their opinions. Thank you so much, Engineer Namano, for the platform, and may God bless you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Abdi, for the encouraging sentiments. It's always good to hear from you, to know that you are fully in and you support the workshop 254. Okay, I believe those are the only questions, unless there's one more. I can see Engineer Adai. Engineer Adai, do you have something to say, to ask? Our senior engineer.
Yeah, no, actually, I was having problems in joining, but I think I'll follow it when you post it on YouTube. So at the moment, I don't have anything.
You should prepare yourself. You'll have to come on board, I believe, with Engineer Mwangi. Talk about local content and project financing.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll be available.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So, my good people, we've had a brief session today. I believe we are doing well. We'll continue doing more sessions. So next week we'll also have, I believe we'll have Engineer Ohaga and another guest. The focus will be on mentorship. That is an issue that also came up, especially from Engineer Nancy. There's this call on mentorship. And I've also had Engineer Marambe bring it up. I've also had Engineer Anjichi bring it up. So conversations that will be coming up moving forward will be a build-up on conversations from the past. Like this conversation will be the one informing the next, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, I believe we can conclude the discussion here. And thank you very much, Engineer Okanga. And thank you very much, Engineer Marambe, for being at the workshop 254 today. Thank you very much, and may you all have a very, very
Thank you for the
fruitful
opportunity.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Engineer Namano, for the opportunity also.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
okay, bye.
Yeah, bye to everyone.
Everyone.
Okay.
Let me stop the recording.